almost like the beginning, thank you, of the fit. Like, we have Senna is a Brazilian, Latin American sporting hero, and Diego Maradona was obviously an Argentinian sporting hero. But what we know and what we see in the film is that later on in his life he has lots of issues and problems with his addiction and drinking. Am I okay to just keep talking?
Yes, yeah? Of course.
And so what I realized is he had a part of Ayrton Senna and he had a part of Amy Winehouse, but he's Diego Maradona. So he has a whole nother new element, which is hidden, and because he lives still, he's alive, that was different to the stories of Senna and Amy. But I feel like he's a mixture of both of them together with Naples, which makes something else. I would say at the beginning, I thought it was going to be more difficult and more challenging. But in reality, when we were making the film, because I live in London, the story really takes place in Naples, in Napoli. Most of the voices in the film were living in Buenos Aires. Diego Maradona was living in Dubai. And for me to meet with Diego Maradona, it took a long time. You have to talk to lots of people and you wait, and then eventually when you meet him, the first time I met him, I only had 5 minutes. I went away for nearly 8 months and I made the film and I started editing. So actually the reality was, it was very similar to Senna and Amy, where I was really making the film without Diego Maradona. When I was ready to talk to him, I would go and talk to him. But it was not more difficult. And actually his lawyers, his team, and Diego, they were away in Dubai, in Mexico, in Argentina. They left us alone. So the film took 3 years to make, and over the 3 years, I probably met with Diego Maradona maybe 4 or 5 times. The contractual agreement was I had 3 interviews. Each interview should be 3 hours. So on paper, I had 9 hours of interview time. But because it was so difficult and very expensive to go to Dubai, it was not like I could just say, oh, I'll go next week and talk to Diego, you know. So that was the situation. I had 9 hours of interviewing one-to-one, and I did it in his home in Dubai on the giant palm tree, man-made palm tree where he was living. And actually, when I met with him, it was just me and him and a translator. It was very simple. He was very charming. He was very charismatic. He's a very good storyteller. So actually, when I was sitting alone with Diego Maradona, I liked him. He was a very good guy. The challenge is sometimes getting to meet him. It's very complicated. I wouldn't say we tried to focus on one or the other, but what was when I made Senna, the story of Ayrton Senna, he had a very clear rival, Alain Prost, and the story became about the conflict between the two characters. When I made the film Amy, it was about Amy Winehouse and her relationships with her family, with her boyfriend, and her relationship with the press and fame. So it was something you can show, an obvious external rival or conflict or drama. With Diego Maradona, what was interesting when we did our research, you're looking for who's the person that's making him do these things? Why is he doing this? Why is he doing that? Why did he make that decision? Did someone make him do it? Did someone force him? And actually, it seems everyone said, no one tells Diego Maradona what to do. He tells Diego Maradona. So then the idea came of, it's all in him. And it was his trainer, Fernando Signorini, who first in the interview said this idea. There was Diego and there was Maradona. And when I heard this, I thought this is interesting because, one, it's a more difficult thing to express in a film, this idea, which is inside somebody. But also, I liked it because it was different to Senna and Amy. So it was my 3rd documentary, and I liked the idea that it was a different idea because this is all the internal struggle between Diego and Maradona, and one of them is really nice, but one of them is the person that is successful and the football player. So I like this idea, and this all came out of the research of talking to people who know Diego Maradona, who were there and who spent time with him. And they first told me this. And then during our interviews, I would ask people, and everybody would say, I remember Diego, he was great when we were in Naples, he was a wonderful guy. The person he is now, maybe is someone different. So this idea came up a lot in our interviews. And so that's how we decided to try to express this character. When I was talking to Diego, the first proper interview, and I went to his house and I sat down with him. I had in my head my list of questions, and I thought, these are the easy questions, these are the difficult questions. Like number 2 of the easy questions was about his ex-wife, and he said, don't talk about her. I don't want to talk about her. Oh, okay, this is the easy question. Then number 4 was about his first manager, Jorge Sisterspieler, who's a nice guy. Everybody said, nice guy. So I said, okay, let me talk about someone that he liked. Don't bring him up, he stole from me. So I was like, okay. So then I think, okay, let me talk about really easy questions to begin with. So then we talked about his childhood, his parents, Via Frito, and actually playing against England and, the World Cup. So then we started to have a conversation. And then he was talking, and I thought, okay, I have to save these ones up for the next trip. Now, because he lives in Dubai and I'm in London, the next trip was 1 year later. I guess the important thing to answer is, whenever you hear Diego Maradona's voice in the film, that's from my interviews. So in the end, he talks about everything. He talks about his children, he talks about his addiction, he talks about his relationships and children and everything. Eventually, I talk to him about everything important that you see in the film. At no point did to me, this is the good thing about not speaking Spanish or Italian. Nobody said to me, you can't talk to this person, you can't ask about this. So for me, I had to talk about everything, and I had to be able to be free to speak to everybody. I think, does that answer?
Things you wanted to, things that you decide not to connect it maybe with the history, because Maradona in Italy, even if you don't follow football.
Give me an example of something that you think should have been in the film that we didn't talk about.
For example, because when you see the movie, there is a point that Maradona says he wanted to leave Napoli because for him the Italian scheme was too complicated, and so he asked Ferlaino, sell me. But Ferlaino, of course, that invested so much money. At this point, after this starts all the bad story of Maradona, the drug things, the prostitutes. So from that point on, if you don't know so much, you think that maybe he was depressed. And he started to do all this because he didn't want to stay in Naples, But maybe this is not true.
Maybe that's not what I'm saying either.
Ecco, I wanted to know.
That's what you think it's saying.
Yeah. So
for me,
yes.
I think the problems begin after the World Cup. For me, when he denies his son.
It's important what you mean. It's not important what I think. But
that's what I think it is. For me, his face changes when he's asked, "Is this your son?" And he says, "I know a lot of people." So his eyes, the smile, the happiness is gone, and the changes he decides to lie.
So this is the turning point.
For me, that's the point. It may be subtle, but when I look at it, I see a different Maradona before the World Cup and after the World Cup. And the main thing is he should be happy he's won the World Cup, but that's when he starts to lie.
Is that why you decided to end the movie by the reunion of him and his son, actually?
So this moment happened during the making of the film.
All right.
So when we started the film, this had not happened. I think that's 2016. Yeah. So we started the film 2015, 2016. This is the end of 2016.
Right.
And I didn't know it had happened, and I didn't know that I would think in 2 years' time this was important. Because when I started the film, I'm like, I don't care who he sleeps with. I'm not interested. I'm not interested in tabloids. I don't read them. I don't watch the TV shows. But once we did the homework and the research, you think, actually, this decision is a big moment in his life. And then it felt like actually, and he would say, I didn't care. He says in the film, I didn't care. But actually, it did matter to him, I think. And so, yeah, it was important to somehow, but so many, 30 years. That's what's so sad. That's what's so sad. So we had difficulty to find how to tie it up. And so, yeah, we had this moment at the ending because it seemed important. And now we know he's had many children, which he hasn't, some of which he's recognized now. But it felt like that story was important. The other thing I think I should say is because of the way we do our research and the way we make these films, there's always a cut of the film that's like 5 hours, and then 4 hours and 3 hours. And so there's a very long version of the film. At one point, it was 45 minutes before we got to Napoli. And then after Napoli, half an hour. So in this section later on, I interviewed his children, lots of his children. I interviewed, the daughters from Claudia, and they were all in a version. And we went to Cuba, and we showed a lot of his life after and before Napoli. I think it was really moving hearing the children speaking. But the problem was the film was just too long, and I wanted to make a movie for the cinema, and someone somewhere will make the TV series, but in the end, I decided to focus on the point when he was the best footballer in the world. He comes to Napoli, he becomes the best player in the world, he wins the World Cup, and his problems begin in Napoli. Personal, relationships, children, addiction, everything happens in Napoli. Everything afterwards is a residue, the result of what happened when he came to Napoli. So that was the reason we chose to make the film about 7 years in Naples, and the 45 minutes became the 5-minute crazy opening, and the ending from half an hour became, 5 minutes or something as well. As in Costa Rica's film?
Yes.
No, I didn't see it. I saw it very late in the edit. I didn't see it when it was released. I love Costa Rica's films, Underground and Time of the Gypsies, the films that won the Palme d'Or. I saw them at the cinema, they were amazing, but I didn't see the documentary about Maradona. My reasoning for wanting to make a film about Maradona was because I love football, and I remember him playing, and I read a book. There was a book written about him like in the late 90s, 99, 98, that was about his life. And I remember thinking, what a story, what a life, what a crazy experience. One day, wouldn't it be great to make a film about him? And at the time, I was making short films and fiction films only. I'd never made a documentary. This is long before Senna. So that was the first time I thought it would be good to make a film about him. So it wasn't inspired by the Costa Rica film at all, no.
Any feedback from Costa Rica after the film? Nothing?
No, I don't think he knows who I am. Where do they know? No, not at all. What I would say was interesting is we do a very hard cut. After Naples, we have a little moment when we're in Buenos Aires, and then we show him later. And what's interesting is that hard cut where we jump forward and he's big and he's been in hospital. It's in the middle of that cut is when Costa Rica made his film, which I didn't know when I was doing the edit. But actually, Costa Rica interviewed him at a certain point. We met Diego Maradona later in his life when he had recognized his son. I think he's in a better mental, physical place now, probably than he was when Costa Rica met him. So it's a different type of film. It's worth saying that. It's pretty incredible for a living person. I can't think of anyone else that's had 2 films in Cannes while they're alive. Who else?
Non credo che ci sia nessuno, una persona vivente.
Bob Dylan.
Was he
Nanny. Yeah.
in Cannes twice?
More
Which
than
film?
twice. The Scorsese did.
Not in Cannes though.
Ah,
I'm saying 2 films
Cannes,
about a
Cannes.
living person in Cannes Film Festival.
Sì, 2 film dedicati.
Can't think of anyone else.
Sono rimasta molto ammirata della costruzione narrativa di questo film. Mi chiedevo proprio il lavoro di ricerca che c'è stato dietro nel materiale, appunto nella scelta del materiale, quindi poi anche l'editing che è stato fatto dopo.
I don't know if you want to say something about how you found the Italian sources. Fiammetta was doing a lot of that. Why don't you say something?
No, in italiano?
Do in Italiano.
No, all'inizio c'è un sacco di ricerca perché i film di Asif nascono dall'archivio, quindi è importante capire che cosa esiste e che cosa c'è. E per trovare le immagini, soprattutto le immagini più difficili, che sapevamo ci servivano per raccontare questa storia, bisogna conoscere la storia, vita, morte e miracoli praticamente della persona. Quindi c'è un grandissimo periodo di ricerca, lettura di libri, articoli. Dopo di questo c'è un grandissimo periodo di incontro con le persone, quindi siamo io e la mia collega Lina Caicedo che ha invece curato la parte relativa all'Argentina. Abbiamo incontrato più persone possibili, quindi amici, persone che l'hanno conosciuto, giornalisti, familiari, e parlando con queste persone si arriva a un livello ancora più dettagliato di quella che è stata la storia di Diego. E all'inizio, perché come dicevo i film di Asif nascono dall'archivio, nascono dalle interviste che fa con le varie persone che incontra, io e la mia collega Lina non sapevamo la forma che questo film avrebbe preso, e quindi veramente abbiamo ricercato dall'A alla Z, cioè dall'inizio della sua carriera in Argentina fino alle ultime immagini del giorno prima, e quindi per poter dare la possibilità a lui di guardare e vivere nell'archivio e capire attraverso l'archivio e le interviste chi era Diego e che storia volesse dire, quindi il processo di ricerca è enorme.
E Diego e Maradona insieme.
I'm amazed how you did that for me. Brilliant.